Karim, what were your first thoughts when hired to design a building on 187th Street?
Well, the first thought was how in line it is with my philosophy and my feeling about that New York, like many cities in the world, needs some affordable housing. And also, a missing market is affordable luxury, what I call affordable luxury, which is kind of entry level for young couples or newlyweds or even single people. And a lot of young people are more than willing, even if they're working in downtown Manhattan, willing to do that commute because there's subway line running there and everything. So the commute is not really an issue because they can actually get a bigger space for less money. So it was great. It was like an opportunity. I thought that's a place that needs a lot of development. So it was a great opportunity there.
Was there an initial inspiration for the design or a story of the building?
Yeah, well, what happened, the original inspiration actually was to, number one, enter that neighborhood doing something that had some sort of sense of, in a subtle way, some sort of sense of color and some sort of, to bring in a kind of language and a feeling that was going to move the neighborhood kind of forward and evolve it. Nothing too radical, something kind of subtle in a way. And the flower of like New York State is actually the lilac, and in fact it's quite indigenous in that area, especially in Washington Heights area in Inwood. So we took the lilac flower and actually pixelated an image of it, and that gave us the facade. So if you look at the pixels of the purples and going to whites and silvers, that's actually just a huge flower that's being kind of almost projected on the building. And then we found a company to make special panels in metallic lilac shades that are going to do the facade. And again, with that said, all on a very, very reasonable, really, really tight budget, that we're trying to do something kind of creative in that regard. And the other part of it was then that the windows ended up taking on this kind of interesting rectilinear, diverse forms. And at first, when I was playing with those forms and the grid, I was actually trying to literally almost spell words abstracted in it. And the words I was writing actually was love and life. And originally when I started, I even was doing the words from the Hebrew letters of love and life. And so our first proposal is actually, you can read in Hebrew, love and life.
People have nicknamed this building the Tetris building. Is that fitting? Is that what you had?
Well, people nickname everything, so they'll always find some name. No, Tetris was never part of the equation at all.
It was a flower.
It was a flower, yes.
What was the biggest challenge in working with the site location?
Yeah, the greatest challenge of working with site location was the fact that the typography there actually tilts about 25 feet down from one end of the building, right, from the east side to the west. So that was very difficult, and the reason it was difficult is because the building is based on a modular prefab construction technology, which is a fantastic relatively new technology. And so when you're building prefab with boxes, but then all of a sudden you have a sloping plane, there's the challenge here of how that's going to meet the ground and how that's going to work.
How did modular construction affect the design of the building?
Well, the modular construction, what happened is we first of all designed the building, and it's interesting because the facade is very grid-like. It looks like it's modular. But when we first started designing the building, we weren't actually using a prefab modular construction way. We were doing it more in a conventional way. It's poured concrete slabs, columns, etc. So all of a sudden, halfway through the project, we discovered this company out in Pennsylvania that does prefab. And they've only really in Manhattan done one other building up to date. So this was a great opportunity to do something new and original and work with them. And because it's prefab, of course, the price points of producing it are even better. You can make, you can produce at a much cheaper per square price. So all of a sudden we realized, well, this building fits prefab really, really well. And for us to come into budget of what we were aiming for, we really needed to engage that kind of technology. Yeah. Well, the great thing about modular housing, and even more so prefabricated housing, is that the sense of once you reach a certain quality in construction, that quality is always the same, meaning that it's not deviating depending on contractors. Also, the problem in general that I noticed with architecture, and I've only now gotten involved in it kind of more deeply in the last 10 years of my career, is that everything is kind of hand done. It's all hand labor. So I travel the world and I see, I'm in Korea and the quality is spectacular in some places. I'm in Turkey and the quality is not very good. And I'm in, all over the world, States, the quality is not very good here in general. And you see it's all dependent on whoever you ended up getting on the job. So, but prefab is like designing a product in a way. That once the product, the tooling is done and everything is in place, right, the quality will always remain the same and it's kind of perfect. So you're not dependent on hand labor as much, and you're not dependent on that local quality of that place. The idea is that, again, it's a kind of really, almost you could argue, democratic art. It's like trying to do things that are really accessible, affordable, and this will be a rental building, but you get a really good, well-designed space.